tech is moving so fast, you're not going to know absolutely everything, but being more open-minded to know like, hey, there are specialists, there are other ways in which you don't need to know everything, but you need to be able to like drop the ego, understand that, learn from other people that can teach you how to fish, and then like work with them to maximize what the output and what the results are. I think is an important thing to learn, because I'm always fighting people's egos at that level. And it's like, God, just drop the ego. I mean, we could solve this problem very quickly.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we bring you conversations with leaders who are making an impact in business and our communities. Today, I'm here with Makoto Kern. He's a UX product design strategy leader with IIIMPACT, speaking of making an impact, IIIMPACT Incorporated, and the host of the Make an Impact podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to join this.
So, people who watch or listen to the podcast know that I love strategy. I love talking about strategic thinking. I love the idea of putting more strategy into our lives and how to do it right. So what does a UX product design strategy leader do, and how do you help your clients with their products?
So, when it comes to designing any type of product, you could tell a lot by an organization, kind of how they're structured. And, this gets into whether you're looking at the .com boom or bust, or now the AI boom and maybe bust later. But it all comes down to being a user-centric organization and versus a feature-centric. And so what I mean by that is, what we try to do is try to develop empathy within an organization. So you want to develop product for your users, for their pain points, for their goals. And so having that understanding of like, not when you, when you design a product, you don't want to say, hey, if we build this, the users will come, we'll make millions. It's more about like, what are our users actually trying to do? What is the pain point that we're trying to solve? But also to that effect, a good user experience designer also needs to understand what the strategy is behind that. What does it relate to the business goals and objectives? And what are the constraints of the development system that you're building on top of? You have to take into account all these kind of aspects of it when you're developing product, because everybody is a designer in a room. Everybody wants to develop or design the best product. But when you're having, design can be very subjective. So when you're talking to a SME or the director or the CEO, and when they have a objection to what you have to back that up to, hey, we're developing this feature because it relates to this business goal. It solves this user's pain point, and our developers can only build on this tech stack. So this is why it looks like this. And so that's kind of our job in a nutshell, is to kind of tie all that in together to create a really good product that sells.
Yeah, and it's always amazing to me, and I'm guilty of this as everyone else is a lot of times when we come up with something, we come up with a problem we want to solve, we come up with a solution we like for ourselves, not necessarily what would be the best solution for the person we're trying to solve the pain point for. And it really is surprising to me that we need to have this conversation so many times with people, but it does come up. It's like an inherent bias we all have in ourselves of, well, this is what I would like, so this must be what everyone would like, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that happens quite a bit, and we'll get this time and time again. And I always relate it to, I break it down into, if you're going to build a house and you say, hey, let's just build a house, 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and then we'll have the people come in and move in, and then they'll tell us what they want. By then, it's too expensive. Oh, we don't want a 2-story. We want a single story. Oh, we want 4 bedrooms. We want 3 bathrooms. And if you start to make changes then, just like your product, it becomes very expensive. And why not do the upfront ask before the people move in? So
yeah, absolutely. So besides empathy for the customer and trying to solve a pain point, what are some of the things you consider when you come up with a strategy for a client, and why are those things so important?
So when we a lot of our more recent, I would say, kind of engagements with our clients, what we tend to do, and we've really optimize this kind of like upfront strategy piece. We call it workshop, we call it a sprint, kind of an immersion process that we do. Is that we go into an organization and we almost call it a therapy session where we get into the organization, we sit down for 2-3 days, kind of like a short workshop, but you get so much done where we have the leadership in our organization that includes everything from marketing, sales, customer service, the SMEs, the product owners, CEOs, CTO, and we get them in a room and try to get alignment. That's the main thing. I mean, when you go into so many organizations think they're aligned. They make assumptions into what they think the goals and objectives are. But when you really come down to it, when you see the communications between each other, it's usually pretty poor. And so we get them to actually show like, hey, these are the most important things to your business. This is what it looks like over the next, 18 to 24 months. And get them to understand like, hey, we are aligned that this is our most important thing. And then once you have that kind of in place, that's again kind of where we go into the user empathy. What is our day-to-day workflow of a user? What does that look like? And then get them to pinpoint like, hey, these are the points of pain with our users. This is how they would interface using our software. This is what they're not doing. This is what some of the things that they're doing with maybe other people within their organizations that could use the software. And then we get the development teams, the head of development, to say, okay, these are the features that we're looking to build. These are things that are very risky. We're not quite sure if they're going to be what they look like. So let's user test those. And then features that are pretty much table stakes. We say, okay, we know what a login page looks like, or we know what this looks like. So let's go ahead and start building. And so that way we create this kind of like quadrant of like, let's de-risk things that are that could cost us a lot of money, but could make us a lot of money. Let's get user testing around that. Let's build prototypes. And then things that we know we could just start going, let's feed that into the backlog of the development teams. And so that's kind of where we accelerate that whole process of going to market faster, because by then your teams could then ask, okay, why does this have to happen this way? Why do we have to develop a dashboard that has this? And you just line that all back into what everybody has been aligned to from this workshop. And that's kind of how we accelerate that process for our clients.
Yeah, once you take the time to figure out that alignment and develop that with the client, mm-hmm. Once you get down to the nuts and bolts of features and capabilities, I'm sure your clients come in with an idea of what they want for features and what they think they need. How does that stack up versus what you find you really need to do for them in terms of features? Are they coming in asking for the things, or do you find there are more basics they need to get done?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because most of the time their thought of accelerating time to market is just give us wireframes. Just let's just jump into wireframes. This is what, we know what we know. Let's just jump right into it and just give us pretty looking wireframes so then our development team could start making it. And that's always the go-to, like, hey, this is how we accelerate. And it's always this is where churn happens, and this is where you talk to one person, they say one thing, you could talk to another, you say another, and then you go up the ladder. No, we want to change all this. This is what we should be doing. And so it's almost a guarantee that happens when you go into an organization where they think they want something. And by championing this feature-centric to a more user-centric kind of approach, you really give them the tools to teach them how to fish. You teach them how to like really think about, okay, well, you may have an idea of what that is. And look, later on, if we launch something, we test that, A/B test. You see whether there's conversion rates, or you see usage, you see time on task, things like that. You see the metrics of the user. And you can say, hey, look, are these things improving that everyday workflow for users? If it's not, then let's go back and let's change that. But this is where it ties into other parts of the organizations, the sales team or a marketing team. If they're trying to market or sell against their competitors and they say, hey, look, we need to our software is supposedly, like cybersecurity, is supposed to help find, issues much faster than this other software. Well, we could show that through the data and through the metrics, because our software, the learning curve is faster, ability to find things are much faster. So yes, we can now sell that as a marketing thing and a value prop. And so, yeah, I mean, it's whether, from a UX design perspective, we can tell till the cows come home of what we think is better, but when you back that up with data, that really helps our organizations understand, like, okay, yeah, let's do it this way instead.
Yeah, you've been doing this a long time. You've got a ton of experience. What are some of the mistakes you see companies making in 2025 that other companies made back in 2005?
Yep. It's pretty much the same thing like back then. I mean, if you have a website or an app, all of a sudden, yeah, we're going to make millions because we have a .com that we've added to our name, or we added a website, and it doesn't matter what it looks like or what it is. We just have to have it. And the same thing I'm seeing with AI. AI is the same thing where it's like, oh, let's inject this feature into our application, and people are going to use it, and great. And we're actually tracking prompting and what happens after users prompt within the application to see what happens. And one of our clients have actually done that, and we've seen they kind of bypassed us and say, hey, we just need to inject a Copilot or whatever into our app. And when you see the tracking of it, you're not really seeing usage the way that they thought it would be. And that's, again, AI is just yet another feature. And so you have to approach it the same way and understand, like, how are users going to use it at this page or at this certain point in need, and then optimize it. Because, I mean, you could still use AI wherever you want to use it, again, like a feature, but are users really going to do that? Especially when it comes to enterprise software, people will tend to do whatever is easiest for them and what they're used to. And so if a chatbot is something that they would use, yeah, maybe they might use it, but most of the time it's not. Maybe they go down and write something, use an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is. And if you don't make their job easier, that feature has now cost you, however many months and whatever development time to launch that thing. And now it's not being used. And so, yeah, we're seeing similar approaches about this, and just that urge to push AI into things, just like it was back in the .com boom. So we're hoping to change those minds of keeping that user-centered approach.
When you have a client who wants to push the easy button like that, speaking of .com boom era analogies, when they want to push the easy button like that, do you push back on them? Do you let them do it? How do you handle that working with those clients?
Yeah, it's something where you could tell. I mean, people will go back to bad habits. They will go back to what they think is comfortable when they're under pressure, and it's always something where we've constantly, even if we've been with them for years and we taught them the right approach, when pressure comes from the board, investors, or whoever, they tend to go back to bad habits, and we have to kind of level set them and say, look, you feel like you're speeding up, but in essence you're taking the wrong approach. And nowadays with this, you have to have speed and you have to have direction. Yes, the need to launch faster is going to be all these force multipliers for AI. AI does help you, with coding. It helps you with certain aspects of research and crunching big data sets. And, but this is helping all other companies. It's helping all your competitors. So having both speed and direction are so important nowadays. And so, it's something that time and time again, we'll sometimes they have to burn, when you say, hey, don't touch the hot pot, it's hot. It's the same thing with this. And sometimes it could get to a point where they are spending a lot of resources into launching something that is super risky. And when we tell them, how much resources are you dedicating? What is going to be the outcome of this if you don't get it right? And when you kind of put it to that perspective and saying, hey, let's just take a step back. We're not delaying it for months. We're delaying it for maybe a few days just to make sure that we're doing this right. It kind of level sets them to understand, okay, let's do it your way, Makoto. And this is this is going to save us a lot of time if we realize this is not the way to go. So
I love how you frame that discussion in terms of what is the risk we're taking on by doing it this way, the idea of speed and direction together, right? One without the other is not useful, no matter what solution you're trying to choose. And then also thinking about we don't rise to the occasion. We learned in the military, and we continue to learn that we don't actually rise to the occasion. We fall to the level of our training and our habits. And I'm glad to hear that those conversations sound like they're effective. That's really great advice for anybody who's watching or listening. When you have to have this kind of difficult conversation, put it in terms of business decision factors like risk, like direction and speed, right? Those kinds of things. So what other parallels do you see between the dot-com bust of 25 years ago and where we are today?
I'm seeing a lot of just from the evaluations, from just the amount of the salaries and just the expectations are very high. And I'm sure some things are going a little bit more viral, and you might have seen some of these. I've had some LinkedIn posts about this as well. But there's almost like this circular type of investment approach that's happening between OpenAI invested in NVIDIA invest, their stocks rise up hey, look at all the people buying our chips, and then they invest back into OpenAI. It's almost like that plug that plugs into itself, kind of circular thing, or the snake eating its own tail. And it's like, wait a minute, there seems to be very lofty things that are happening where if this whole thing pops, it can become very, very detrimental. And I think anybody who had a website, they thought, hey, just make me an eBay / MySpace / Craigslist, and I'll make a ton of money. And same thing here, we're seeing a lot of AI wrappers that are just being built very quickly on top. They just add it on top of Claude or ChatGPT, and then they'll just release something that will just wipe out most of these new products. And so, it's a good thing that at the end we'll see what happens and who comes out ahead and what comes of that. But it's almost scary because there is so much money and so much investment that's going into this, but you're not seeing the whole story, I think, behind some of the outcomes that are happening with AI. And I think this is where one of the kind of phrases that I came up with is it's called the AI competence gap. And it's basically, you think AI is kind of magical in a sense because your gap of knowledge, let's say I'm a designer and I don't know how to code that well. I have it code something for me. To me, it's like, hey, I don't need a developer anymore. I just can use this. I don't have to worry about anything because my gap of knowledge and my competence of that is pretty wide. I don't know what's happening, but it just seems like it took care of an entire department or a person for me. But then if I ask a developer, they'll look at it like, yeah, this code is okay. I wouldn't ship it, but it would help me get to a point faster. And vice versa. Same thing. If you see designs that are being made, I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't ship that design. It looks like everything else, but it helps me get to a starting point much faster. And so those are the kind of things that you have to be kind of wary about, because when an executive says, hey, just replace our marketing, sales, or developer in this, just have one person just have different AI agents. Like, wait a minute, that seems very aggressive to do that. And I don't think we're at that stage yet. And so those are kind of the things that you have to be wary about right now, I think, with this kind of bubble that's been forming.
Yeah, we've had a number of tech founders on the podcast the last couple of months. And I love to ask them this question because they're guys who grew up coding. And I love to ask them about where is AI taking you? Is it going to take away jobs? And every single one of them says just what you said. It's a great first draft, but it's nothing we would ship without human intervention, without humans really looking at it and cleaning it up. And in all of these cases, they're saying we're actually hiring more developers because AI is giving us an opportunity to do more work. It's giving us more opportunities to do things faster, but we need more developers to actually deliver on what we're promising.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. And not only do you need like more developers, you need developers that are using obviously the tool and they're using it correctly, but they also can spot issues that do happen, because I'm still seeing, I'm still seeing it hallucinate. It's still saying the wrong things. It's simple things too. But because, I have expertise in 20 years in this, I can spot that pretty quickly. But if you have a team that's relatively low experience and they're just leveraging AI, all of a sudden something that's bad within the code or design is now propagated. And so it has a double-edged sword. You can either accelerate good stuff or you can accelerate bad things within your code and design. So those are things that you have to be really careful of, especially nowadays. If you're capturing people's private information and all of a sudden your code is hackable and you've not fixed the code, you don't have the proper security people or good coders who know how to plug those holes up. And with AI, the hackers can hack even faster. You're going to get sued into oblivion if all of a sudden you just released all this private data out there, and a good lawyer says, hey, let's go after them because we've got 10,000 people that have just been hacked through their data through this one website. Yeah, it's a very important thing that people have to understand that.
Yeah, I don't even think you need a good lawyer. A first-year law school student can probably get most of the way there on that one, right?
Oh yeah,
there's so much risk, right? And just letting the AI do its thing, like the circular logic you talked about. And the risk is really high, especially since right now we're measuring the success of our entire economy on what a lot of the AI companies are doing and promising right now.
Yeah, agreed.
So you're still a big believer in having the humans on the team. How did you build the team you've got now?
So, I mean, that's as an agency and been doing this for, 20 plus years, that is so important when it comes to a service-based agency. And, the team is everything. And I've always said that I always put my team first and the client second, just because if you focus on the right people on your team, they'll just naturally take care of the client. And whether or not the clients need to hear something, and it takes time to be this confident and to have the experience to be able to push back on clients, and in the right way though, and not just being order takers. And as a consultant, we may tell things that the client may not want to hear. You may tell that their baby is ugly and this is the right way to do it, or this person, this individual is detrimenting the way your company's process is doing X, Y, or Z. And so building that team is so important. I always tend to try to lead from behind, because I want my team, each individual to really run with the projects, to be their own leader and to really take ownership of things. And by doing that, I could see who really rises to the occasion and who doesn't. And so, it's so important, where I always say the motto is to hire slow, fire fast. Because I've been in enough situations where I know, like, one bad person within your organization, even if they're an A player, but if they have a bad attitude, they can really detriment your entire organization or entire clientele or project just because of their attitude. And so it's so important to hire the right people and to always like manage them as well. I've been managing my team. We're all spread out remotely and everything. And so communication is so key, and seeing communication break down within just organizations that are all within an office, and it still happens, and it happens a lot. And so that communication style and structure is really important for how we run our organizations, how we run our products. And if you see, again, organizations do have, like, there's a lot more red tape to fire people. And if somebody is detrimenting a project, doesn't have the right attitude, you really have to address that situation immediately and take an account of that. And that's how I just take ownership within my organization as well.
Yeah, it's so important to take on those leadership skills, take on those leadership aspects, and make good decisions for the team and the company.
Yeah.
For the young people who are either thinking about tech careers or want to go into tech careers, know they want to go into tech careers, what qualities and skills do you think they need to develop to have a successful tech career?
Yeah, this is an interesting question because I have kids myself, and my oldest is 17. He's a senior in high school, and this is a conversation that has come up quite a bit. And I think what it comes down to, and what I've always told them, is that with if you're going into any kind of university, or if you're thinking of skipping it altogether, I mean, there's so many resources nowadays where it's almost hard to justify sometimes college, because it is so expensive, and it's gotten so expensive. And is it teaching you the right things? And now with AI, are they embracing it? Are they not? I'm hearing different stories that are out there. Some colleges are pushing it. They are embracing it because you have to make kids employable, because a lot of junior positions are being replaced by AI. So it's something where I always say it always comes down to the fundamentals of, like, it's who you know, it's how you talk to people, how you communicate with people is so important, and developing those relationships. Always being something where you are helping people figure out things. You are taking the initiative of those things are still so important, no matter what industry you get into. And if you do have you love tech, you love programming, you love that. I think there's always a place right now where, if you're hungry to learn, I went to school for engineering, and I just had this conversation last night with my son. I said, you have to approach everything with that kind of engineering mindset of trying to figure things out. Whether it's you're trying to figure out how to market, he's in a band. I'm like, well, how do you get your name out there? Who do you market to? How do you do that? Is it a newsletter? Is it like contacting promoters in different organizations through social media? Leverage all the different ways in which you can do it and figure out how to do it most efficiently. And I think, yeah, whether you're trying to get into, whether it's tech, or you're trying to become a plumber, or if you're trying to do whatever, I mean, all those job functions, there's a way in which to become very good at what you do, loving what you do, because then you'll figure out how to optimize and be more of almost like a dot connector of holistically, how do I make not just your skill set in that, but everything around that to make that a better, decision in what you get into.
Yeah, I look back on my time in engineering school as well, and besides all the amazing technical things we learned, I think the biggest skill I learned was being curious enough to stick with a problem and see it through to the end. And
Yep.
that was not a skill that anyone was teaching us in engineering college. That was a skill they kind of expected us to either show up with or learn on our own.
I remember my lab teacher. Oh, he was the meanest guy, and he would always say, like, there's so many people going up, like, what is this? What is this? He's like, you're an engineer, figure it out. And he would yell at us. And he would just keep doing that to a point where you're like, okay, I'm not going to ask him. I need to sit here and figure this out. And eventually he sees that you're struggling, and he sees that you're trying, but the default is just to go over and ask for the answer. And so I think just using that as kind of like, I always hear his voice, like, hey, Makoto, just figure it out. Like this, I think that's a good thing to try to follow.
Yeah, it's a really important skill. And I remember my time in the Air Force, that was something we had to teach I was a mid-level officer when the very first millennials were coming in. And some of them, when they were faced with a problem, would kind of throw their hands up and go, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And we would have to say to them, look, you don't have the luxury of not being able to do it. You've got to go figure it out one way or the other. And, when you've got an idea, come pitch it and we'll talk about it. But I can't figure this out for you.
Yeah. I think and there's probably been some posts about this with AI, where AI is kind of removing the figuring it out part, because it's so easy, the accessibility to get information. But I feel like it's almost like a calculator in a sense, where you don't have to, like, understand long division to sit there and do, like, the steps or whatever. You get that answer, then you can solve bigger problems. And so hopefully the education system, and that's a whole nother topic, but if the education system could leverage where it's like, okay, let's use AI in certain aspects, but let's make the problem solving much bigger. Let's make these projects within the classroom much, like history. Well, let's pretend like you're running for, whatever prime minister in the 1700s in this European country. How would you go about doing this? Let's have a team of 4 people and let's figure out how you would run for that. Like something like that would be so cool as a project to, like, put all aspects of understanding and all different kind of dot connecting in order to like, how would you approach this problem? So hopefully that kind of creative problem solving is something that the schools will kind of change, because the way they teach has been the same for how many decades. And so now they have to adjust to make our kids more employable in the future.
Yeah, I think we have a tremendous opportunity in our education system right now to get past just teaching kids how to gather information, which is what we learned when we were kids, right? Gathering information was important, but it wasn't until we were much older we started doing things like the project you talked about how would you synthesize this information to a problem, or more importantly, asking whether this is even a problem worth solving. Kids can start doing that in high school now, instead of having to wait till they were much older like us for anyone to even ask us the question, is this a problem worth solving?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, from financial systems where they said, oh, the kids don't know how to balance a checkbook and things like that. Well, maybe that's instead of just solving, some boring math equation, put them in a situation where like, you are in, $50,000 in debt. You do this. How would you get out of it? What would you do? You have credit cards over here, student loan over here. What is the best approach to this? Like really get them thinking real world scenarios that can happen to get them out of that situation. And so, yeah, hopefully that's something that, is taught in the near future.
I love it. But I want to take a break from the serious questions. I want to play a game. Are you up for a game?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. The name of this game is Rapid Response. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. Now that doesn't mean you have to give a one-word answer. You can elaborate as much or as little as you'd like. In fact, we encourage that. Don't be fooled by the name Rapid Response. But we just want to get to know Makoto a little bit better, okay?
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
All right. Makoto Kern, Rapid Response round. Your time begins now. Podcast recommendation.
I would say Diary of a CEO.
Diary of a CEO. We hear that one a lot.
Yeah.
A practice you'd like to see more people embrace.
Being more empathetic.
Good one. I love it. Someone we should all be paying attention to.
That's a good one. I would say this may be controversial. More Avi Loeb, the whole 3I Atlas thing. It's just interesting. He's a Harvard scientist that is looking at something that's in a different way. May or may not be aliens, but it's just somebody who's in a public feature or in the public eye and is, looking at something very differently than the rest of the community. I just think that's really cool that somebody's trying to do that. Whether or not it's aliens is one other thing, but the way that he's going against the grain is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, what he's doing is really great because I think he's doing it to make a point, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he thinks it's really aliens. And for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, over the last decade or so, we've seen a number of interstellar objects pass through our solar system. Astronomers are observing them. No need to panic. But and Avi is asking the question, well, is this a natural object or not? And he's asking it in a provocative is not the right word, but he's challenging everyone's assumptions on what we're doing. And I think that's really healthy the way he's doing it. And he's very much saying, look, I'm not saying this is what it is. I'm saying let's challenge our assumptions on it and figure out how to be really sure. And what are the questions we need to ask ourselves to get to that?
Yeah, and I couldn't recall the name of the scientist team, but this gets into some of the pyramid things, where they've discovered structures underneath the pyramids through, I think it was Italian scientists that used different X-ray penetration type of technology from a satellite. And the fact that, they were basically saying, oh, there's nothing underneath there. It's nothing important. But then they challenged to show, like, scientifically there is something there. Again, it's the whole, you can have whatever theories that it could be, but the fact that you're challenging the status quo, you're challenging what's in the history books, just to like ask, look outside the box. I think that thinking is so important nowadays.
Yeah, and there's a difference between challenging assumptions and spinning conspiracy theories. And just a quick shout out, we had a guest on a few weeks ago, Dan Ward, one of the co-founders of Detroit Labs, and he recommended the Conspiracy Theories podcast, which is really great. And in fact, most recently where I heard about Avi was on that podcast. I think it was last week's episode or a couple weeks episode. So another podcast recommendation for you all.
I gotta check that one out.
Yeah, it is great. You're going to love it.
Okay.
What is either your get pumped up song or your walk on music?
Oh man. God, that's a good one. You know, I love all ranges of music, but definitely like, you know, my son's like, oh, Dad, what do you like? I said, I like Korn, like the heavy metal, something like heavy metal, or it could be like, God, I mean, any one of Korn's songs, maybe Rage Against the Machine. I love those things. I usually work out to that type of music, so probably one of those.
You know, it's so funny, just because another throwback to Dan Ward from Detroit Labs. He's listening with his son. His son found Limp Bizkit.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so we were talking. So I don't know if you know Dan, but we'll have to get you guys connected if you don't know each other.
For sure. I mean, my son, he is. That's what inspired him. He's a drummer for his band, and that's what he's doing now at 17. And they just toured in L.A. just 2 weekends ago. And so, yeah, I mean, he loves all that stuff, and so we get into it. And it's fun to talk and tell him about, like, in the 90s how the like Lollapalooza in Chicago was, and you know, me seeing like Nine Inch Nails back then. I mean, it was so much fun.
Yeah, we'll have to get you guys connected, because I think your sons are about the same age. Yours might be a little kid, but that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
The biggest influence in your life?
I would have to say it's probably two things. One is so I have grandparents in Japan. My grandfather back then, we'd always visit every like 4 years ever since I was born, and they were super successful entrepreneurs, real estate investors, and I always got a taste of like what that life was, to see that wealth. And you know, coming back to Chicago, Midwest suburbs, my dad's a teacher, my mom didn't work, so we're very middle class, but to always, you know, once in a while see that lifestyle like really motivated me to saying, okay, if you work hard and you do something, you can make, you know, a lot of money and make something of your life. And that was has always been a big inspiration. Along with my mother, she's always been a tough lady, and she's always been somebody who's in the back of my mind, you know, like, don't give up. I don't care if you come in last, just never give up and just keep going at it. And so, you know, when you talk about podcasting and all this, I mean, you know, I don't know how long you've been doing it until you became, you know, like successful at it. And it took me, you know, over a year to like do this. And, you know, we're at the ages where like, I don't want to do podcasts. I just want to get to the work. I want to just do the work. I don't need to talk about it. But now, you know, it's something that, you know, just kept on grinding for a year, like maybe 50 subscribers, 100 subscribers. And we recently just hit the 94,000 or 95,000 subscriber count, I think just yesterday. And so just knowing that, you know, don't give up, don't stop, keep going. And you know, even if you're not good at it, just keep grinding at it, and eventually something will come out. That's what I find inspirational to me.
Well, congratulations on 94,000 subscribers. We're not quite there yet with this channel, but we are working towards it, and we don't have any plans to give up anytime soon. So,
I'm sure you will. You'll get there easily.
What is a book everyone should read?
David and Goliath, Malcolm Gladwell. I always reference that book. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I love Malcolm Gladwell's stuff, but I haven't read that one.
Yeah, that one's great because it talks about the whole, you know, David and Goliath. There's situations in which, you know, being David has shown where you come out ahead and where it's so important. And I think in the stories that they tell in that book, it's really something that people should read.
Absolutely. Now, one thing we haven't mentioned yet, even though we're doing this remotely, you're right here in Las Vegas and have been here for a few years now. What is your favorite fall recreational activity in Las Vegas?
Oh, I would say, growing up in Chicago, the winters at this time was just horrendous, and it just kept on getting worse and worse. So when we go outside today, it's in the 70s. It could probably even touch 80, and like it's amazing. But one of the things I love doing, because of the fact that when it's too hot, it's you can't really go outside. But now with the temperature where it's at, going to Mount Charleston is amazing. I mean, you see the environment just change with trees and everything, and you even see snow, and it's awesome. It's just an hour away, and the temperature could just be 20, 30 degrees difference in that drive. And so doing that, bringing out the family and the dog, is something that we love doing.
Yeah, Mount Charleston is great all year round, but especially this time of year, it's gorgeous, and there is snow up there already. So
yeah, that's so cool. Going sledding up there is so much fun.
Yeah, it's great to have so close.
Mm-hmm.
What is your dream vacation spot?
It's going to be by the water, since there's not a whole lot of water here. We love going to like Mexico. It's so much fun. I think that's something that we've done quite a bit. So I would say more of a dream would be, we've been to Italy, and I would love to go back but visit more of the southern Italy side of things, and just eat the food, try to get fat. Love the wine, and that's probably something I really want to do the next year or two.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
What is a trend you're excited about?
I am excited about, obviously AI. This is something that we talk about. It's something our agency is into. But I just recently got a Tesla, and I've got the full self-driving. And when I was in the master's degree program at my school, one of the projects that we had to do was come up with your own self-driving car, and the whole ecosystem. How would it run? How would you grow it? Things like that. And I'm no Elon Musk back then. This is like 20 years ago, but just getting into the car, seeing AI drive. I mean, you literally have a robot driving you around, doing everything. I mean, it is insane. I've not touched the steering wheel since I've gotten into it for the last 3 weeks. And just seeing that work and the way it does, and watching other people's eyes when they're driving with me. I mean, that to me is such a cool thing. And the fact that, I've got teenage drivers, they're driving, and we know Las Vegas is not the safest place to drive. There's a lot of accidents, there's a lot of things, and just knowing that this is a technology that can transform the safety of I'm always afraid that when my kids drive, my son's a great driver, but I'm still afraid of somebody, getting drunk or whatever, just not paying attention and hitting him. And so if we can lower that risk reduction through the use of self-driving cars, I'm all for it, and I can't wait to see where this technology goes.
Yeah, I think we're going to get there. I think healthy skepticism and challenging of assumptions is a good thing for all of us right now, with self-driving and autonomous robot stuff right now as well. But I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, for sure. I think the latest stat was they have one accident in every 6.5 million miles of driving, versus humans right now has one accident for every 700,000 miles of driving. So it's a stat that they're improving dramatically.
Yeah, I think we'll get there. Yeah. All right, last one. Mm-hmm. Favorite sports team or player?
Oh, so of course it used to be Chicago Bulls growing up in Chicago. Michael Jordan. I mean, I grew up in that era. I mean, that's no doubt, the best era, of course. But moving to Vegas, I had to choose between Blackhawks and Golden Knights. So now I love watching the Golden Knights. They're my favorite team for hockey, and so yeah, I don't have a favorite player, but definitely Golden Knights right now.
Go Knights, go!
Yeah.
The last couple days haven't been great, but the season got off to a decent start.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully they turn around. They always turn around.
they always turn around. I grew up as a Red Sox fan. I'm still a Red Sox fan, so I know what it's like to be biting your nails right up to the edge of the playoffs and all through the playoffs. So.
Oh yeah.
Nothing new for me. Well, thanks for playing our game. It's nice to get to know you a little bit.
Definitely.
The way some of the other questions might not do for us.
Oh yeah, I love it.
We talked a lot about the importance of strategic thinking. How did you develop this skill in yourself? And then how do you turn someone who's a brilliant developer or engineer into a strategist?
Yeah, so we definitely did start our agency more of a like UX design, so it's more tactical. It's getting those assets done, getting the UI and UX, in wireframes or that type of output. But when it became to strategy, we started seeing where you start noticing these things where when you have more insight into holistically of an organization and having the ear or at the seat of the table from a business side, because we know like, hey, Makoto developed this app, but you know what? We need to make more money having ads in the app. Like, oh my God, users hate that stuff. But it's like, well, we need to make more money. And this is how we're going to do it. And adding ads to this it has to be a way in which is not detrimental to user experience. So I have to think about those things. And then I have to talk to the development team of like, well, how are we going to do this? Is it going to look very clunky? We have to make it look really smooth and not disruptive. So as I become a better designer, the kind of the wherewithal of what's happening around me is so important. And so that becomes more strategy, because I have to think about all the things that are happening now and in the future, because something has to scale. I'm not going to develop for just the 2 weeks sprint, but I have to develop something that for in 6 to 12 months, it still works. And so that's where that strategic thinking kind of comes into play. And so when you're a developer, you could tell the difference between good developers, and same with designers, but good developers and bad or not as good developers, just subpar, is we're just hyper focused on the feature, developing it, coding it, that's it. But when I interface with some of our development teams or even clients' development teams, there are questions that they ask where they're thinking holistically about, hey, how does this work? They think outside their box. They think outside of their circle of just, this is what I need to know. That shows maturity. That shows somebody who has more strategic thinking, because they think about other things beyond just their job function for that day. And so whether or not, it's hard to teach somebody that other than telling them that's what they should be looking at. And when their eyes start to open and understand like, oh, this is why you're developing this, because of, these other things. And it helps them, there's less back and forth. There's almost an immediate connection when you say, oh, did you think about this? And they'll tell me some things that maybe I didn't think about user experience because they've seen it somewhere else. And that kind of interaction just makes for a stronger team. So yeah, it's hard to say like there's like, hey, just do this and you're also a strategic thinker, but there's certain frameworks that you can set in place to let them say, hey, think outside of just your role as a developer and think about more holistically how this affects the entire system and why.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I look back on the leaders who took the time to help develop my strategic thinking. And granted, I was a very slow learner, but they would ask a lot of questions like, why do you think this is important? And they wouldn't give me the answer. And I'd have to think through it. Now, you're involved in our startup ecosystem here in Vegas. You've been involved in other places. One of the really important components of a startup ecosystem is having CTOs to help those companies achieve their goals, achieve their tech stacks, and build capabilities for the future. How do we prepare our young engineers and developers to become the CTOs of the future?
I think, yeah, it's an interesting question, because I've seen certain CTOs that are in there that are very competent technically, and I've seen some that aren't very competent technically. So I think what you want to tell, it's obviously being very competent in all aspects of the tech stack that you're working with is so important. But it's also, being open-minded. I mean, yeah, you may be working at an organization that has worked with a specific code base for a long time, especially enterprise. This is a product that's been doing well for the last decade or 5 years or whatever, and that's all you know. And all of a sudden now you have to, hey, we have to pivot to a different tech stack or a different, way of thinking or whatever the case is. And maybe you have to keep the lights on with your team, but now you have to figure out, how do we do this with a very limited budget or time, or there's a lot of pressure coming down on you. And I love interfacing with CTOs because they're usually, when product is under a CTO, it's usually problematic. It usually means their organization's not mature enough, because it should be separate. Because the backlog is the most important thing for a development team, but the user experience isn't. It's secondary, and you don't want that. That becomes a feature-centric organization versus user-centric. And so, CTOs that are open-minded to know, like, hey, we need to hire a consultant. I mean, if I don't know what I'm doing and somebody has done it 100 more times, why don't we hire experts that know how to do it? You soak in as much as you can, and then you figure things out. And I think for CTOs and just kids that are getting into that position where they have to be in charge of tech. I mean, tech is moving so fast. You're not going to know absolutely everything, but being more open-minded to know, like, hey, there are specialists. There are other ways in which you don't need to know everything, but you need to be able to, like, drop the ego, understand that, learn from other people that can teach you how to fish, and then, like, work with them to maximize what the output and what the results are. I think is an important thing to learn, because I'm always fighting people's egos at that level. And it's like, God, just drop the ego. I mean, we could solve this problem very quickly if you didn't have that.
Yeah, and it's not just CTOs, right? I mean, it's a lesson we all need to remind ourselves of, is to drop the ego sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about the Making an Impact podcast.
Sure. It's something that, again, I'm not the type you talked to me 2 years ago. I was like, I don't need to do a podcast. I just want to talk to my clients and work. And it's something where I knew, like, after having so many conversations after our team meetings or a meeting with a client, and we just start talking, we just start, with the client offline, and my team and I are talking, and we're like, oh God, this would have been just great if other people would have heard, like, oh, they should have done this, or why don't they do this, or why are they being stubborn at that, or whatever. Just having that out there, to me, would be so important, just to hear that, because it's almost the same things that we repeat. We jump off one call with one client, we jump to another, and they're doing the same thing, and we try to tell them that's, don't do it that way, or you should do it this way. And sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. And but having the podcast, you know that people can get to know who you are without having to, like, talk to them yet. And I think it's so important to see that. And so with the Make an Impact podcast, we geared it towards, where we tell those different war stories or case studies. We tell about, like, certain processes that we've gone through. When we talk about, we have an AI team, and we talk about different things. And so, I was really focused on a niche at first. And with podcasting, you can hit the broad strokes of, like, topics, or you can be very niche. And it really depends on what you really like talking about and who you like talking to. And, we've had some, what really helped us go viral for, I think it was in June or something, where we were, like, again, just at, like, maybe 100 subscribers. We had, basically, it was I called it job apocalypse. And if you're a parent and you have to figure out what industry your kid should go into, or what you should study. And I think the Diary of a CEO actually came out with a roundtable, like, a day after while I was editing that episode. And I think when we launched it, probably wrote on the back of that, because it got like 30,000 views, and I think in a couple days, and it was amazing. And that kind of propelled our subscriber count. And so we just did a recent one about AI and teachers and them in classroom, and what they, we interviewed a special ed teacher, about how they're using AI and their approach to it. And so that one has, I think, like 40,000 views. And, just just understanding kind of again, me trying to be empathetic to the audience out there. Me as a parent, what am I thinking? What am I talking about? And I think some of these things are really important when you're doing a podcast. You can try to go after whatever kind of like subject matter you want to go after, but go after something that is interesting to you, interesting maybe to the audience that you want to attract. But it's been such a fun thing where I procrastinated for the longest time. I probably made, all these lights and all the cameras, whatever that I'm like, okay, I got to do a first episode. And eventually, we did our first episode, and I'm sure our first episode, if I look back at it, is horrible compared to now, but you just got to keep grinding it and doing it. And you know what, at the beginning, if you're getting into podcasting, who gives a shit? No one cares what nobody may not even see it. Just do it. And then you'll eventually just get better and better at it to a point where, yeah, you know how it is. Like, you're trying to listen to me, active listening, while you're trying to come up with like things to say. It's not easy, but eventually you get very good at it, and it gets very fun because now I get to meet people like you who live in Vegas, and this is the networking of the future, and you really get to know people very quickly through this type of medium.
Absolutely. We've got a bunch more introductions I need to do for you to folks in the ecosystem here. But yeah, you just get out and record. Use your phone. Mm-hmm. If you're so inclined, if you're looking for some little step to take, go order yourself some couple of $100 wireless microphones so you and a guest can have like nice clear audio. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Just get recording. Record for 5 minutes, and then you'll go, oh, I really want to talk more with you, or like, oh, I want to do something a little better next time, and it'll go. So just recording. Yeah,
and if you have kids and you try to ask them to subscribe, they won't subscribe until you hit a certain number of subscribers. My kids, I was like,
but congratulations on all your success, especially I didn't realize you were hitting those numbers in just the last couple of months. So congratulations on that.
It's crazy to see that. And yeah, my goal now is to get that silver play button by Thanksgiving. So hopefully we'll get there.
Right. Get there.
Yeah.
Everyone who's watching, go subscribe so Makoto can get his silver play button. What's coming up for you in Impact for the next few months?
So, for us over the next few months, we actually recently we signed a project with this startup. I don't want to get too much into it. It's more of the fitness industry, which is new, but there's a lot of really cool gamification, and it's something that it's kind of like, as a UX designer, you're always looking for like the pinnacle of design is a consumer product, and then adding a lot of really cool designs. It's physical product mixed with like gamification app design. And this is something that I'm really excited to actually get into for our team. But there's also, we've got, our other clients that we're consulting with that I really love to see, like, there's a push to really be more data driven, do a lot more A/B testing, and really get into that. And it's so fascinating to see just the name of a button, the color of a button, and seeing how that affects conversion rates of people. And it gets kind of into the nerdiness of UX design and data, but I love seeing that, and seeing I have my assumptions of doing this and doing it for a long time where I think it would help. But then when you get into it, like, wow, that color red to the color blue for that button actually converted 5% better. And that equates to thousands of dollars a month for a client. And so, those kind of things that we're really trying to push. And again, it gets into the whole, with AI and everybody moving faster, you have to be data driven now to really make those decisions. Because if you make the wrong one, you're going to be left behind pretty quickly by your competitors who are doing it that way.
100%. So for everyone watching or listening right now, what's something we can all do today to start thinking more strategically?
I think just think outside of just your job function. Think about if you were the owner of the business or the product or whatever it is, you have to think of many different aspects to make this thing better. So how would you do that? And so by doing, by kind of thinking that way versus just, this is my job role, this is all I think about, this is all I care about, that's it. by switching that mindset to really thinking about, okay, what if I'm this person or this person, how would I improve what I'm doing within that product? I think that's how you switch that mindset into more strategic thinking.
I love that. I think that's a perfect place to leave it. This has been an incredible conversation, and I want to thank you for joining us today, Makoto. Where can everyone find you so they can also thank you for joining us today?
Definitely. You could, again, you could subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Make an Impact with 3 Eyes. Also, you can visit our website, impact with 3 eyes.io. And yeah, so find me on social media, LinkedIn, all that. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on this podcast. It's been great. I love all the questions, and looking forward to seeing what this looks like when you launch it.
My pleasure. So thank you so much for joining us again. I also want to thank all of you for watching and listening. If you found this conversation valuable, go ahead and share it with someone who can use it. Leave us a comment. Don't forget to subscribe so we can have the number of followers that Makoto has. And also, if you're on a podcast platform, you can leave a review. We would love it if you'd leave us a 5-star review so we can get the word out and build the audience, so these conversations with great folks like Makoto are seen by more people or heard by more people. We have a lot more of these amazing interviews coming your way, so go out there, do great things today, onward and upward.